I knew something was wrong when my intern called me from the stairwell, whispering like she was hiding from a bomb threat. "They locked your access to the shared folders," she said. "Which ones?" I asked. "All of them. Legal, operations, even your own presentations." She sounded winded, said she overheard Carter from procurement joke that I was officially radioactive. Apparently, the Slack thread about my exit already had a custom emoji, a rat in heels. Funny thing was, I hadn't resigned. I hadn't been fired either. Hell, just 3 days ago I delivered a keynote at their annual compliance retreat, the one where they clapped, too hard, too long, after I closed with, "Compliance isn't paperwork, it's power disguised as protocol." Turns out they believed that line more than I thought. I hung up and walked past the glass walls of their open-concept ego farm. My name was already missing from the lobby screen. The assistant chair was suspiciously filled by a man named Brennan who wouldn't make eye contact. No warning, no HR meeting, just surgical deletion. When I got back to my office, my building pass blinked red. I had to buzz the janitor just to grab my umbrella, the one I left behind because I trusted I'd be back on Monday. The only thing untouched was the plant I forgot to water for a week. Even that looked confused. By evening, LinkedIn was a war zone of passive-aggressive farewells. Wishing her well on her next chapter, grateful for the moments of collaboration. Transitions are growth in disguise. No context, no explanation. But buried deep in a private group message, meant for board-only eyes and accidentally sent to my old work email, which someone forgot to deactivate, I found it. A single PDF, subject line risk mitigation, external consultant phase-out. I clicked, scrolled, froze. Page 3, bullet 5, Mercer to be quietly removed from all active projects. Blacklist from internal compliance vendor pipeline. Initiate phase-out language across departments by May 1st. Today was April 30th. They planned to erase me before my birthday. I stared at the screen as adrenaline pushed my coffee into panic. But beneath the sting, I smiled. They'd blacklisted me from the industry without remembering that I wrote the damn rulebook they all pretended to follow. Somewhere in a file they never read was a clause with my initials, one they forgot to delete when they ghosted me, a clause that meant every single one of their regulatory certificates had an expiration date they couldn't outrun. And I was about to remind them. The first domino fell at 8:14 in the morning. 2 days later, a junior auditor at Lexington Capital emailed their risk division in full panic. Urgent. Our anti-fraud clearance was flagged as non-verified. Mercer Consulting no longer listed as a certifying body in our vendor profile. That one CC'd 5 executives, 2 of whom were already on thin ice for blowing ESG scores last quarter. Then came the calls. First, from a compliance director who once made a joke about my shrill voice in a boardroom full of men who laughed like they hadn't built their careers on my PowerPoints. "Lena," he said, dragging out the vowels like we were friends, "there's been a little mix-up on our end. Nothing major. Just wondering if we could get a revised certificate for our ISO attestation." I let him talk, let him squirm, let him imply I'd somehow forgotten to click a box, as if I were still his assistant, not the woman whose initials were coded into the compliance templates of 22 Fortune 500 companies. When he finally shut up, I replied flatly, "I'm afraid Mercer Consulting has undergone internal restructuring. Your files are under review. I'll notify you if and when recertification becomes possible." Click. By noon, the panic was viral. Emails leaked. Internal chats got screen-capped. Someone forwarded me a Slack message from Greenmore Logistics, where their legal head screamed in all caps, "Who the hell approved blacklisting the woman who literally signs our liability insurance confirmations?" Nobody had. That was the most delicious part. They'd all assumed someone else pulled the trigger. Cowards never check the barrel. They just pray the bullet lands somewhere safe. Meanwhile, my office buzzed like a casino. Mel, regulatory affairs bulldog and caffeine addict, had gone full scorched earth, auditing our entire client list with a vengeance usually reserved for ex-husbands. She kicked open my door, holding 3 binders. "Do you want blood or humiliation first?" "Surprise me," I said. She grinned. "Westbrook International falsified data in their DEI audit last year. You flagged it. They paid a bribe to get it buried." "Prove it," I said. Already forwarded to the ethics committee at the SEC. Just like that, the reckoning had begun. But here's the thing they didn't understand about me. I don't scream. I don't threaten. I write things down. I build legal fortresses out of bylaws and fine print. And when I burn someone, it's with the slow, polite fire of a candle melting through marble. I walked over to my office window, watched the towers where my former clients nervously sipped overpriced espresso, praying their internal risk didn't boil over. They thought blacklisting me would be clean, silent, strategic. But what they'd actually done was hit send on their own self-destruct sequence, and they were only on step 1. By Friday, they were begging. Not in public, not yet. That would require the kind of spine these people only grow after lawsuits. But the private emails? Oh, they were delicious. Subject lines like urgent clarification request, Mercer oversight role, and seeking reinstatement options immediate. One, from Amanda Glay, the same Harvard-branded gaslighter in kitten heels who once rolled her eyes mid-meeting and said, "Lena, no offense, but compliance isn't a personality," read from one woman to another. Now she was forwarding scanned copies of her personal calendar, flagged with Lena Review written in pink pen, like I was some corporate fairy godmother. She signed off with, "Happy to grab lunch and reset." Reset. Honey, this isn't a router. This is your career. But I wasn't after lunch. I was after rot. Quiet, systemic, irreversible rot. The kind that starts in the foundation and chews up the wiring before anyone smells the smoke. So I didn't reply to Amanda. Instead, I called Trent, a mid-level regulator at Pharma with a grudge and a memory like a goddamn elephant. Back in 2018, Amanda had tanked his internal audit recommendations to land a consulting deal with her husband's firm. The paper trail was subtle, but not subtle enough. I had the emails, the timestamps, the whistleblower clause, written, ironically, by Amanda herself. "Trent," I said, "I'm not asking for favors. I'm just handing you the keys to a very interesting door." He paused. "And how deep does it go? Past your knees? Maybe to the neck?" Click. By Sunday night, Amanda's name popped up on an anonymous Reddit thread for insider risk exposure in corporate ESG fraud. By Monday morning, she'd wiped her socials. By Tuesday, Greenmore had suspended 4 pending shipments across Europe due to a temporary compliance hold. And that was when they called. The same they who buried my name in a PDF like it was radioactive, the same ones who thought excluding me would give them a clean board and a stronger quarterly narrative. Julian, CEO of Foresight Partners and part-time golf colonizer, left a voicemail that smelled like desperation and overpriced cologne. "Lena, let's be civil. You and I both know you're too smart for this kind of vendetta. Let's realign. Realign. God. Men like him love verbs that don't mean anything." I let it sit for 2 days, let him stew in the smell of his own decaying leverage. Then I sent back one line. Realignment begins with a public retraction and a wire transfer to Mercer Holdings for breach of Clause 7B. An hour later, he emailed, "Let's talk terms." But I wasn't interested in talking. I was interested in timing. Because what none of them realized, what not a single one of those empire-polishing frauds had considered, was that I hadn't even started the real damage yet. It came next, and it started with a birthday party, mine. The guest list was curated like a war room. The venue was a rooftop in Midtown, frosted glass bar, custom cocktails, everything black and silver, like a wake for professionalism. On the surface, it was a party. Laughter, music, the kind of clinking glass ambiance that makes bad men forget their prey. But this wasn't a celebration. This was the lighting of the fuse. Everyone on the invite list had one thing in common. They'd either underestimated me, owed me, or once tried to edge me out and failed. And now they were all packed into one glittering box, sipping martinis, pretending not to notice the wolves in the room. Even Julian showed up, smiling too hard, sweating through a $4,000 suit, probably hoping he could charm his way back into certification territory before the second quarter reports hit the fan. "Happy birthday," he said, handing me a box. I didn't open it. I just raised a brow. "What's inside? A job offer or a subpoena?" He laughed. I didn't. I let him sweat for 5 minutes before I turned to the mic. "Thank you all for coming," I said, clinking a spoon against my glass. "Tonight's not just about my birthday. It's about integrity. You remember integrity, right?" Polite chuckles, a few stiff backs. One guy visibly flinched. I clocked it. Someone recently suggested I should be more civil, that revenge was beneath me. I let that hang, then smiled. I agree. Revenge is petty, but accountability? That's just good governance. The projector behind me flicked on, and the air turned cold. Slide 1, a spreadsheet. Slide 2, a time-stamped email thread showing Foresight Partners forging a vendor signature, mine. Slide 3, an internal memo, leaked, with Julian's initials, authorizing a hush payment for a failed inspection at a manufacturing site in Jakarta. Silence. Julian's face froze. I watched his throat move like he'd swallowed glass. Someone at the back whispered, "Holy shit," under their breath. Then I dropped the final slide, the one that mattered, a photo, date-stamped, watermarked, geolocated, of Julian and Amanda meeting with a compliance broker who'd been under federal investigation for bribery. The same guy Amanda once called a family friend when I'd questioned his presence on our advisory calls. I didn't say anything after that. I didn't need to. I raised my glass to clarity and to consequences that don't need introductions. People clapped, awkwardly then louder, then with real panic in their eyes as the implications settled in. Amanda was absent. She'd declined the invite, said she was traveling for wellness. Hope the retreat came with a strong VPN and extradition insurance. Julian tried to speak after the toast, tried to explain. I walked away mid-sentence because what mattered now wasn't their apologies. It was the chain reaction I'd set off. By morning, 4 companies would freeze their contracts with Foresight, 2 would issue internal ethics inquiries, and 1 ambitious junior associate would send my slide deck to a journalist at the Financial Herald, anonymously, of course, all according to plan. But the best part, the one move no one saw coming, was still in my purse. A flash drive labeled Final. It was a Tuesday when the flash drive did its real damage, not with fanfare, not with some Hollywood hacking sequence, just a quiet upload. 4 files, no passwords, no watermark, sent from a burner laptop in a WeWork where no one knew my name. Each file was named the same, Internal Audit Preliminary Findings, Do Not Distribute. Guess what happened? They distributed them everywhere. Within 6 hours, they'd leaked to 2 industry watchdog groups, 1 European regulatory body, and, my personal favorite, a scorned ex-employee at LexCap who still had admin-level access to their internal Slack. The first file, a forensic breakdown of a diversity audit Westbrook had fabricated to land a federal contract. The second, expense reports showing inflated travel costs that masked bribery payments to an offshore shell firm. The third, screenshots of Julian's executive chat calling regulators donkey clerks with clipboards and mommy issues. And the fourth, a full PDF contract proving Amanda's ESG compliance rating was rubber-stamped using Mercer's old letterhead after they blacklisted me. That last one was my signature, forged badly. By Wednesday morning, 3 of the companies mentioned in the leaks had disabled their social media pages and issued identical panic statements. We take these allegations seriously and are initiating an internal review. The kind of corporate haiku that means we're screwed and the lawyers are sweating? But I wasn't done, not yet, because I'd been saving one more call, a name that could set the whole forest on fire if I just whispered it into the right ear. His name was Jonah Hart, senior editor at the Financial Herald, Pulitzer runner-up. He'd once emailed me asking for a quote on a supply chain scandal I refused to touch. I ghosted him then. Now I sent him everything. Clean, organized, labeled. I didn't just leak, I taught the story how to walk. He called me 5 minutes later. "Holy hell, Mercer, sure you want this traced back to you?" "I don't want credit," I said. "I want consequences." And I could hear the smirk in his voice, happy to oblige. The article dropped 2 days later, front page, digital and print, the compliance illusion, how ESG became a smokescreen for corporate fraud. It named names, showed receipts, ran timelines, but most importantly, it shredded the myth that the industry could function without people like me, or more precisely, without me. I didn't answer my phone that weekend, let it ring until the voicemail filled up. I took a train to the coast, booked a glass cabin where I could hear the ocean hit the rocks like the slow thud of justice finally arriving. And in the silence of that storm, I read the final message from Mel, 5 words. Julian resigned. Amanda under investigation. Then, 20 minutes later, a follow-up SEC called. "They want you." I set the phone down, picked up my wine, and smiled. Because that's the thing about being blacklisted, it only works if you don't own the blacklist.